A common use of state management in Flutter is to go between screens. We're using provider to handle the state management. With Flutter state management, the exact same code with no modifications will also run within a web browser. All the code and the images for this are available on GitHub. The application will run with no modifications on Android and iOS. If you want to use the same images that's using this tutorial, the images are here on GitHub. Although I'm using equirectangular images for this tutorial, you can use standard 2D images from a mobile phone or a camera. This tutorial focuses on the use of Provider 5.0, which has null safety support. It's one of the most popular ways to manage state in your Flutter application. You can also search for this on the internet and get a lot more information on Provider that goes beyond this simple tutorial. I'm going to create a Windows application since it's slightly easier for me. I'm going to migrate it to the new null safety. I'm going to add provider to my project. I'm also going to add Panorama to get the 360 images navigation on my system. This also has null safety compliance. I've opened the folder in VS Code. I have the Flutter and Dart extensions already installed on VS Code. If you don't have it installed, just install it through the VS Code extensions icon. I'm going to create an assets directory. Within the assets directory, create images. Transfer your images that you'll use for the project into the assets folder. This is the GitHub repository. So I've cloned it down. I'm going to drag and drop it right into the folder. Now I have all my assets in here. Go to pubspec.yaml. Note that the SDK is 2.12, which is null safety compliant. Also note that the dependencies were automatically added in Provider and Panorama with the newest versions. These are both null safety compliant. Go down to the assets. We're going to make the entire folder accessible. Go to the main.dart file. Let's get rid of everything. Makes it easier to read. Let's add a scaffold here. We'll start off with a container. Let's add the app bar to the scaffold so we can see what screen we're on. Let's test it. Right, it's working. We got the app bar up. I'm going to change the theme here. And we'll get rid of that little debug thing in the corner of the app. Oh, it's working. Okay, just thought it might be a little bit easier on the eye to have a dark background for the images. So I'm going to extract the scaffold into a separate class. Let's call it thumb screen. So now here, I'll move it to a separate file. I'm going to use control dot. Okay, that fixes the dependencies. I just needed the material dart. Let's go back here to main. I'll use the same technique, control dot as a shortcut. I'll import the library. Let's create a second screen for the details. This would be where the full image is. So I'm just doing STLS, the shortcut for stateless widget. I'll call it detail screen. I'll go over to the part that's orange. I'm going control dot. It opens up the menu for to fix the dependencies. I think I want the scaffold to get the app bar. Yeah. This is a test. And I do want the app bar. So we have two screens. We have the thumb screen and the detail screen. The main screen just pushes it out to the thumb screen, which is the first screen that you're going to see. There's no connection, so you can't actually see the detail screen, but let's fix that right now. And it's like a column, there's just children in it. Start off with the icon button. Let's just pick any. Let's just pick the AC unit as a test. Okay, so we got this one button here. So what I want to do is when I push this button, I want it to go to the next screen, which is the detail screen. So we're going to use the navigator, not a named route, but just a navigator, the material route. So it's material page route, which takes a builder and we use the context and we'll just push it to the return the detail screen right there. So it's going over to the detail screen. So we've got the connection. I'm going to make this a thumbnail, and then when you click on it, it goes to the detail screen. I think I'll extract this as a button so that it's a little easier to work with. Let's call it thumb button. So I have my class right here. I actually want to pass it the thumbnail. Okay, let's first make sure it works. It's in assets images. So I'm going to pass this first thumbnail here. But I think I'll display it first. So instead of this default AC, There you go. Okay, we got it pretty small here, so I'm going to adjust the size. Okay, it's looking a little bit more reasonable. Constructor, let's accept the base name. Maybe I'll call it name base. And we'll have it. We need to pass it here. So the base, I'm going to use the first R001911. When I passed it over, I'll just drop it in here. Let's try another one. These are the same image at different light values in the car, so the person can pick, the correct value here. And there's a EV compensation. So some of it's intentionally dark or intentionally lighter because you might have the car in bright sunlight. So we're going to also pass the EV value here. So this one is minus 1.7, so it's dark. The lower the value, the darker the image is. These are set when I took the image. It's not part of Flutter. Okay, so when I get the EV compensation, I'm going to want it to appear when I mouse over this thing. So now when I mouse over it, you can see per thumbnail what the values are. So there's 5 thumbs in this demo. the higher the values, the image is going to be a little blown out, meaning that's going to be overexposed. That's intentional for this type of tester. So higher the number, the brighter it is, and the lower the number, the lighter it is. These are the camera settings. Right? This isn't how you adjust it in Flutter. And then we'll show the panoramic view here where you can navigate. It's probably, let's see, car interior light tester maybe. It's probably more accurate. You know, Flutter, man, it just looks fantastic even with very minimal effort here. So now we need to set up our provider. We're finally getting to provider. So import the package. Oh, import. We need to create another file here for the notifier. I'll call mine maybe image notifier. So my system, this Cupertino.dart or material.dart was automatically introduced. So you won't have change notifier unless you import the Flutter package into this class. Change notifier is part of Flutter, it's not part of provider. We're going to create a private variable for the image, and we'll use setter and getter. I'll set up a default image just so that's not null. Let's see, maybe that first one. So if something messed up and we don't actually send the information over, we'll just show the first image so the application won't crash. And because it's a private variable here, in order to get it, we're going to have to set a getter here and just return the private variable. So if it's underscore the first character of the variable name, it's a private variable. So this is the getter. And to set it, we'll just create a new method, update image in this case. And it's going to accept an image. And all it does is it sets the private variable with the thing that you receive. So this method here is public, right? So you can access it from another class. That's how you set the private variable. Here's the key part. Notify listeners. So if there's a change here, you're going to notify the listeners, and this is what provider is going to pick up. I just have one change notifier provider, so I'm not going to use a list or anything. So the simplest way to do it is just have one. If you have more than one, you just put it into a list. Just search for it if you have more than one provider. Have your provider here that we just created. Image notifier. Right, so normally when you run run app, you're just passing it my app right there. But we're wrapping change notify provider around my app. And so after this child right here, that's where you put my app now. So it should still be no change because we're actually not passing it, but let's just make sure it runs. We still should not see the image because we're not passing the image over at this stage. So on the details screen, it's fairly blank at this stage. We're going to need to use the Panorama Package because I'm dealing with 360 images. If you're just using normal images, you don't need this, but it might be kind of fun to use the panoramic images, especially since you don't need the camera. You can just get the GitHub repo and just use these images, or you can use your mobile phone. You don't need a 360 camera to take 360 images, but it does make it a lot faster. Okay, so we got the panoramic package in here, and we also need the provider. That's how we're going to get the data. Just center it as a test. And then I'll put the panorama here. The child of panorama is the image. So normally this image would be pretty straightforward, right? So maybe I'll just show you what it is before we start using provider here so that you can see that it's just an image normally. So it's going to display the image right here, but I actually want to get it from the thumbnail. So in order to do that, now we're going to have to put the provider information. And as you recall, it's in the notifier. The piece of information that we're passing is of type image. So we should be able to just drop it in here because this is expecting just an image, right? So it's to get that it's a little, maybe seem a little weird, but it's not so bad once you get used to it. Image notifier. So this is the name of the class that's in the notifier, the file that we created. And then just dot. Control dot. When I first inputted this string here, I had a couple errors. One was I forgot to put the S here. Another is I forgot to put an additional 1. So just make sure that you use this corrected string here when you pass it over. Now it will work with this default image, but we actually want to pass the image over from the thumb screen to the detail screen. So let's do that with provider. So the way we set it up is that in image provider, this class that we created to manage the data, there's this setter for the variable update image. So we're gonna have to use this in order to set the image from the thumb screen here. Let's do it. And so this is the method that we created to pass it over. And it's expecting an image. So the data type it's expecting is an image right there. So let's give it an image. It's a name. So it's an assets. images, and then we've got the image name from the buttons that we create, and it's JPEG, I think. Okay, let's try it out. Oh, reload it. Just make this full screen. So it should be dark image here, and the image is dark. And this one should be the default settings. So parts are light, parts are dark. And this should be overexposed. But might be a good setting for if the car was not in direct sunlight like it is right now. Thanks for joining us. I'd love to see you modify this and then post the link to your GitHub repo, or just a animated GIF of your application, or just a still screenshot in the comment section of this video. It would be very motivating for us if you do make use of the video and are able to produce something. I suggest you put your own images in, you change the coloring, maybe the size of it. You could use a different type of button. Make your own modifications and have fun with this technique. And if you have time, then post a link to your GitHub repo or an image of it. That'll keep us motivated. Have a great day. If you do have a RICOH Theta camera, we have a full playlist of API tutorials on how to connect to the camera and grab the images directly from the camera. For this new tutorial series, you won't need a camera, as we will be providing all the media that you need for the tutorials. Have a great day and subscribe to the channel for updates.